I fall under the personality type of an ENFJ. And that E, it stands for an extrovert. I'm a proud social butterfly, and I always have been one. So, in my 16 years of life, I've had a lot of friends. And I mean a lot. So I think it's fair for me to say that I know my fair share of types of friends. Well, this categorization pretty much remains constant throughout the whole of Gen Z. Like the mom friend, the clown friend, the artistic friend. But I would like you all to focus on one of the most known types, the therapist friend. Okay, to break it down into non Gen Z terms, the therapist friend is the listener, the one who gives you advice, the one who understands you and your problems. But have you ever wondered what makes them the therapist friend? Like, what qualities do they possess for that title? The most prominent of their characteristics would be empathy, would it not? Empathy, you see, it's a funny thing. The general definition of the term empathy is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. But that's not all that empathy is now, is it? Empathy is the ability to analyze situations and act upon these observations. Now, here's a shocker: being an empath and being an empathetic person are actually two different things. Being an empathetic person means that you understand people, but being an empath means that you feel other people's emotions as though it were your own, as though you were experiencing them firsthand. The degree of empathy that you feel towards other people is dependent on your genetic characteristics of environmental sensitivity and sensory processing sensitivity. So, if you're an empath, it's highly likely that you got that trait of yours from a family member, like I did. I was always told that I'm a spitting image of my mom. But our personalities would often clash, and we would fight over the smallest of things. So, never in a million years would I have thought that we would be remotely similar in the ways that we felt or thought. But similarities always finds its way to surprise us now, doesn't it? My mom is an obvious empath. She had the crushing experience of how empaths actually live. So, when she saw those traits in me, when I was only 5, crying for my friend who fell at the playground, it terrified her. It made her want to change that aspect of me. Yeah, that didn't really work out very well now, did it? When I think about it now, why would a parent wish to change something about their child? How bad of an experience might they have had with it not to wish that for their child? And in terms of being an empath, what prompted that? Empaths are perceived to be immature people in today's world. That ability to feel other people's problems and emotions as though it were their own seems to be unreasonably sensitive. They're told that they overthink. They're too pessimistic. Sounds familiar? But some are seen to be patient people. They seem to be people pleasers. Empaths want everyone around them to feel as though they belong, something that they struggle with themselves due to the fact that they have ever changing emotional cycles. They're afraid to tell someone no, in the fear of upsetting someone by setting boundaries. They're afraid to come off as mean. On the other hand, at the other end of the spectrum, we have those people who are unable to comprehend other people's emotional cues. So now you may wonder, how do we get the balance between these two things? Reading books is one of the best ways you can build empathy because you get into the head of a different person. And being nosy is always fun, right? But that's besides the point. You get to see life as a different person, from a different perspective, in a different story. You get to feel other people's emotions like happiness, sadness, fear, and love. I experienced all of this with such great intensity when I read the book A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Okay, so little confession, I do like to read books that are majorly emotionally heavy. But this book, I tell you, it was one of the best and worst I had ever read. It was a beautifully written book, but the heavy psychological trauma of the book, had me doubting life for a couple of weeks. It made me doubt humanity. As silly as that sounds, that's the power of literature and empathy. In fact, one of the book's main characters, Jude, himself was an empath. He was portrayed to be a petite person, fragile, a feeler. He was often way too forgiving. By the end of the book, he decides to cut contact with one of his college friends, JB. He takes this decision when JB mocks his disability, and Jude decides to work on his self worth because deep down he knew he didn't deserve that. No one did. The book expresses the guilt that he felt, the doubt that came with that decision that in reality any sane person would have taken. This decision was arguably one of the hardest decisions poor Jude had to take throughout the entirety of the book. Have you ever heard that saying, too much of anything is good for nothing? Well, too much of empathy can make you feel emotionally exhausted. Imagine feeling the feelings of 20 different people along with your own as a single person. Okay, I know it sounds pretty bad in words, but that's the only way empaths have ever known. It sometimes boggles me to think that there are people out there who can have no regard for other people, regardless of what they've gone through. Down the line, it gets difficult for us empaths to navigate between our feelings to the point where we don't know whose we're feeling. Is it mine? Is it somebody else's? Am I sad or am I only sad because the person near me is sad? Though these questions are seemingly simple, down the line they get more and more frustrating to answer. Now, here's a fun thing about empaths, they shapeshift. Not literally, of course, but they try to modify themselves depending on who they're with. They aim to cater to the person they're with to make them feel most comfortable and make them feel wanted, like I said before. This causes them to have multiple long lasting relationships with a considerable amount of people. Okay, by a show of hands, how many of you here think that you know someone who's an empath? That's quite a few. Okay, so now let me introduce you all to one of the most famous empaths of our time, Oprah Winfrey. It shouldn't come as a surprise to all of you when I tell you that one of America's biggest talk show hosts is an empath. Everyone around her comes to love her because of her empathic and caring nature, and her job makes amazing use of her personality, and her show is an amazing display of it. I think that's something we all should master, the display and strength of our skills. When looking at people in situations, activate the visual cortex of our brain, like we thought a few decades ago. Rather, we activate the part of our brain that is responsible for first hand responses. Let me give you a situation. Let's say you got the news that one of your close friends' relative, cousin, or aunt died. Don't you feel a little sad? A little sting in your heart? That's not only because you care for your friend, but it's also because you unconsciously put yourself in their shoes. But since it's unconscious, you don't feel the emotions with the same intensity, rather, a fraction. This cascade of signaling is more prominent in empaths. Now, I don't think empaths always have it horrible. I'd like to think of empaths as a type of superhero. Maybe not the kind that's going to save your life someday, but maybe they make you think that they're worth believing in. Perhaps they restore your faith in humanity. And the feeling that empaths get when you tell them words as simple as thank you or you make so much sense, it's indescribable. The first time I realized this was when I would constantly remember ways in which people would have thanked me in the past. It's something so simple, so pure, yet so special. All this talk about empaths sure makes you wonder, what are the long term effects of being an empath? Some confusion about emotions? The ability to read people like an open book? Well, not quite. Studies show that empaths are more likely to suffer from disorders such as bipolar, depression, and anxiety. But of course, these are just extremes. Most empaths learn to live with these feelings. They learn to turn it into strengths, much like Oprah Winfrey did. One of the best strengths of empaths, in my opinion, is the fact that they are little human lie detectors. They can often tell when someone isn't telling them the whole truth. That slight nervousness, the strong defense, they see right through all of that. But they might not always tell you that they know that you're lying. Rather, they convince you that they believed in your lie, which in itself is a lie. A cycle of irony, is it not? But this is because empaths get very familiar with the way that a person behaves, even after only meeting them for the first time. The attention to detail they pay is precise, and they seldom miss noticing patterns. Something I find unsettling about life is the fact that it's so unfair. How it's never the same for any two people. Someone could have done nothing wrong in life, but they'd still be in a bad place. Someone could be working hard day and night, but they wouldn't be getting the recognition that they deserve. Innocent people are being harmed, and so much more. But no matter how much this bothers me, I can't change it. It's not on me to change the entire world overnight, although I wish I could. And that's something I have to keep reminding myself so I don't fall into a downward spiral of hate and blame. It's something so humbling, yet so comforting. I think everyone should remember that. You're meant to live for yourself, not for anybody else. You're meant to feel for yourself, only for yourself. Thank you.